Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a new edition of Right Aligned. I've got Neil with me from Creative Spark, based in Manchester. This is part of our, well, it's themed as Creative Career Stories, and it's really just an opportunity for us to go behind the scenes with people that traditionally don't normally get much attention. Maybe you haven't shared their stories in the past, or just really give us a chance just to explore a diverse collection of voices as opposed to maybe sometimes hearing the same ones. So if anybody's got any questions as Neil talks, I'll also be doing a Q&A with Neil at the end, but just picking out some points on what he tells us. If any of you guys have got them, drop them into the live chat and I'll answer them. I'll ask them on your behalf. So it's always really important for you guys to get as much out of this as possible. So it'd be great to hear any points that you guys have got. But until then, Neil, if it's okay, just for you to lead us through your journey, as far back as you want to, the key points, and just to sort of give us a bit of a background into who you are and your career to date.
Brilliant. Yeah, so thanks for the invite on, Chris. I think like we've talked about, it's not really talked about it out in the open in the world, so it's nice to be able to chat about it finally, but and hopefully it's interesting to a few people. But yeah, I suppose if I want to go way back, I suppose the inspiration probably for why I took up design and that route was with my dad. And my dad was a head art director at a large advertising agency in Manchester. So from a very, very early age, I just remember the agency and the buzz and kind of the excitement of all the creatives in a big open plan office in the centre of Manchester, and being 8, 9, 10 and going on the summer holidays and my dad bringing me into work and being around that environment. Obviously later on in life you realize how much of an impact in a positive way it made, and how lucky I was, really, because again, speak to other agency owners and other designers who have come through different paths, and a lot of them are kind of in awe a little bit of that path of what I immersed myself in at such an early age, and took it for granted, if I'm honest. So yeah, so very early on wanted to draw, and because my dad was a head visualizer, so my dad was a drawer, so magic markers, thousands of them on his desk. And just basically, before the internet and computers, basically drew everything. So from my experience, I wanted to draw and just be a visualizer and kind of go in that way. So as an early age, the frustrations of having homework, art projects, and me at home trying to draw something and then getting really frustrated and upset, and my dad trying to help, but my dad helping was my dad just doing a 5-second drawing that just looked unbelievable, and I was just like, oh god, am I ever going to be able to get to that? So through the years, through school and all that type of thing, I wanted to draw. Then I went to art college in Whitefield, which was fantastic. So that was just pure, opened my eyes to a lot of things: pottery, textiles, fine art, photography, lots of different disciplines in design, and worked in for 2 years at that college, working on that. And really that's where a chance kind of thing happened, where I had a photography project, and it was really basic stuff, dark rooms. The computers were awful, really basic. They weren't Macs. The project was basically to do a front cover of a magazine. So you shot somebody and then you kind of pieced together a magazine front cover. So people were using acetates and all different kind of stuff like that. And I was off right when we had to deliver it. And then there was summer holidays. So in the summer holidays, I said to my dad, oh, can I come into your studio? And he said, well, actually, we've got a Mac department now. So we've got these new Macs and there's 2 guys in there and this, that, and the other. Why don't you go in there and have a play with that? And literally just blew my mind. I took some stills in. Next minute, they're scanned in, the duotoned. I said I wanted to do the face magazine. They did the exact magazine, all the measurements, the typefaces. And I'm just on this Max, just blown away compared to a black and white acetate that everybody was delivering at college. I'm full color, literally like I'm designing the face magazine. And it just, that was it. Fell in love, and like literally dropped my pencils and pens and went, I am in. Like I want to be on the Max. So really, that's where the love affair for the Apple Macs came in. Then I started to just work for free at my dad's agency in the Mac department, just helping and learning and basically minding the hell out of the guys, bless them. One of them called Andy, who I still know now, bless him. So started to learn my trade on Macs. Whilst I was there, I was working in a shop to earn some money because I wasn't working for an agency. And these guys came in, got on really well with them, and they said, "Oh, we design the hats and t-shirts in the shop." And I said, "Oh, I'm a designer." And he was like, "Oh, well, why don't you come and have a chat with us?" And the young lads, not far off my age, got on with them really well. The next minute, they're saying, "Right, we've got loads of work for if you want it. They worked for a load of football apparel and for all the main clubs. And they were like, "We need graphics for Liverpool and all different stuff like that for t-shirts." So that was my first ever kind of way in. Then I went back to my dad, and after begging him for a Lambretta, I then decided I wanted an Apple Mac because I was like, right, this is it. I want to go for it. So then really from there, I got my first client, Ben, who still tells me to this day, who's a very, very close friend of mine, he gave me my first break, which he'll never let me let go. So, and then really that just started it. So it was kind of, I was always, I suppose, entrepreneurial, sales, kind of out and about in Manchester, drinking in the nice bars and always meeting and socializing with people. So I found it really easy to kind of sell and be able to ask people and, "Oh, do you need something? You need something?" So basically very quickly, I started to just pick up little jobs while I was out and about and being in bars. And then one of Ben's friends, Daniel Kaner, who was a huge influence and had a huge positive impact in my career, was a big entrepreneur, was doing lots of different mobile phone cases and all the fun stuff in that world at the time. And he needed lots of collateral. And he said, "Why don't you come into my unit and I'll give you an office and you can design logos for rent?" So that was my first office with my Apple Mac, tiny little thing, opened the door and it hit my head. It was that small, but I had an office. I was official, you know. I was called NM Designs, which was really original with Neil Morrow. So, you know, lots of creative thought there. And I started and like I say, started to hustle, just speaking to different people, started to pick up little jobs. And then I was full-time at it and lived at my mum and dad's, drove my dad's car, so didn't have to pay for anything. So literally just kind of whatever I earned was little bits to survive. And then, yeah, so really, and then it just started to really grow from there. I picked up more and more work. But then really decided that I wanted to get further afield. So I went in with one of the old, with the fashion guys who had my first opportunity. They had a big client and he asked me if I wanted to go into business. Went into business with him where it was my first venture as a partner, invested £10,000 at the time, which I don't know why Barclays gave me that money, but they gave me the money to invest. Started the business. But the London and Manchester thing just didn't really work, and it didn't really. And at the time, I'd taken on a sales manager, Kelly, and her and her dad came and said, "We'll buy you out of that deal. Why don't we start?" And that's where really Creative Spark was born. My dad came up with a name. I think we were having tea one night, and I was like, "We need to change the name. It's awful." So my dad came up with the name. And then really, we quite quickly from there, we moved into Whitefield, which was around about 2006 to 2009. We're in Whitefield on Berry New Road. Started to pick up lots of clients, EMAP, Magic FM, Key 103, just doing lots of different things like that. And looking back, yeah, it was just there was not, you know, excuse me, the internet hadn't blown up as big as it was going to, and we're kind of still just hand to mouth, just meeting people out and about into Manchester. There are lots of entrepreneurs going out on the weekends, so you were bumping into lots of people who needed the service, and it was that's how we just generated the sales. And Kelly was very similar to me. And then after about 4 years of that, we decided to split. Kelly wanted to go and do other things. I wanted to kind of move on. And within that as well, and there's lots of this, Chris, where it just kind of really merges into lots of different things. But we started a bar and club awards with a couple of different partners, which was hugely successful for a couple of years, where we were the design and digital partner. And that was with Kelly and the team. Then we did the Manchester Awards, the original one, where we did it in the 5-star Radisson. And we were 50-50 partners in that with Moving Manchester, which was a magazine. That was a huge success in year one. But then we decided to split as partners, and then no one could own the name, which was another learning. Always have an exit strategy of who's going to own what, who's going to own the name, who's going to own the brand. Because if you don't, nobody owns it. And the you know, from our side, the thing kind of disappeared, which was a shame. There's another version of it now, but so Kelly moved out of the business, and then really from that point we moved into the city, which was what I was desperate for. So I was desperate to get back into the city. Whitefield was great, but I just felt like I wanted to be a Manchester city centre agency. Obviously grew up with my dad in the city centre, and I just wanted to be there. And just those occasions in business where something happens and it's the stars aligned. An old friend of mine who was a PA in a recruitment agency, which we used to do a little bit of work for, worked for United. And she basically ran me with an SOS and said, I need a new website for the soccer schools and I need it in 6 weeks. The other agency can't do it. Do you want it? And it was almost kind of that thing of, yeah. And then the thing of figure it out once you put the phone down. And that really was a bit of a game changer for us as a brand. So we'd worked with lots of small businesses and lots of different businesses. But as you know, when you're going and presenting to bigger businesses, they do want to see these rock star agent like kind of companies and because they want that peace of mind. You've been there and done it. And I'd always kind of fall short. And once we got the United badge and we started working with United, which we did for 3 or 4 years, it just elevated us as an agency, and all of a sudden we started to win more and more because of that badge and because of that work. And also I think it was momentum and belief. I think all of a sudden you're working with a global brand. I was a Manchester United fan as well, and I think you instantly had that belief that you could do it. We started to work with Peter Kay, so we worked with Peter on his website. So all of a sudden we had Peter Kay in the office, and it just felt like there was a big change. We'd moved to Lever Street and in the city, and then really from there, the momentum grew as an agency. We started to grow. I think there was about 6 of us at that time, and then we very quickly grew from the 3rd floor of Lever into the 1st floor, where we started to get about 15 people. Started to work with like Asics running shoes, and started to get more work from United, and lots of different accounts started to develop. Then we outgrew the space and went to Swan Street. And with Swan Street, came with bigger clients. We won Universal Music, which another was a random chance of luck, which was friend of a friend. And built a great relationship with those guys and did all their TV commercials for all their commercial CDs. And we'd never done it. We'd never done really anything at that level. We hadn't done CGI, which there was a lot of that. So again, it was lots of new disciplines and new worlds. But as a kind of mentality, it was, we'll figure it out. We can figure this out. We've got networks, we've got people, we can do it. And we're hugely successful with Universal Music. We worked with Lily Allen for Argos. We worked with the Nike Premier Cup, which was the under-15s World Cup for clubs. So yeah, we just the client base grew, and it started to get super successful. And then around 2013 to 16 is where we started to, probably get to our biggest in the last 21 years. where we had the key account of Manchester Airport, where we'd won that account, and then basically the whole business changed. It was probably 300,000 account. It was a huge account, and it was the biggest one we'd ever won. And we beat WRG, TBWA, McCann. We beat everyone and we were the only one on the roster. And that, as a percent, like kind of from an agency point of view, all of a sudden, this kind of challenger brand, you know, the wild card, we used to call ourselves, all of a sudden was on a very, very, you know, we'd elevated up to a huge business because the United stuff was great, but it was for soccer schools. We weren't working on the big club stuff. And I think for Creative Spark, we were always a little bit like that. We'd work for New Balance, but we'd be doing some local stuff. We'd work with ASICS, but we'd be doing with JD. We wouldn't be doing Europe. And I think a lot of the sports brands we picked up because of United, but we never really elevated to the big stuff. We were more of a lower level. It was still fun and still really, really amazing brands to work with. But when we won the airport, that almost stepped us up a level. So, and then around 2013 was our birthday. So our 10th birthday, that was a huge turning point. And I think that was, again, as a business owner, one of those points where I think there was 100 people in the office. We had an amazing party. And I remember just going in another room and just sitting there and just kind of going, what does that mean? Like, I'm celebrating something here and I'm not sure what I'm celebrating. Like, am I celebrating I've done 10 years and I've survived? Am I celebrating with 10 years and we are something? You know, and it kind of really, it was a turning point for myself as well of kind of, what am I doing it for? Because it was organically grew and the pace of it was fast. And if I'm honest, you know, there's lots of learnings which we can talk about, but definitely the organicness of the way it grew with no real plan kind of it was the positive impact of it, but it was also the reason why it reduced, because I just felt like it was so the 10th birthday really for me was a big point where I sat there in a dark room on my own and just thought, I'm not sure why I'm doing it, because I don't know what I'm celebrating. So kind of a lot of things changed from that point. We looked at where we wanted to go. We launched in America, which was a little bit bizarre, but my old commercial director had a place over there and wanted to move there, and said, why don't we launch in America? And I was like, yeah, why not? Great. Everything's great. Why don't we launch in America? No plan, no big idea. Just, you're going to go and move into Florida. You move to Florida and we'll service New York out of Florida. So then I go with my suitcases and pretend I'm a big businessman speaking to the British consulate in New York and thinking everything's amazing and we're going to take over the world. Didn't work out that way, to be fair, but we had a good fun for a year. We worked with Orlando Airport. We had some amazing meetings with Miami Dolphins, which I absolutely loved and grew up with. And we worked with downtown New York, Lower Manhattan, on lots of social stuff. So we had some really good fun, but logistically and how it worked, and I just wasn't there in my mind as a businessman and an entrepreneur level. I was barely holding it together for the business I had in the UK to expand in a different country, and the logistics of that and the time differences. And yeah, it just didn't work out, which again, looking back, it was fun, but I think it was a little bit more ego than it was a business decision. But yeah, so that was, I don't think a hell of a lot of people know that, but that was, that was a little bit of a, something we did around 2016. And then pretty much from then, the business reduced. So we lost some key accounts, Manchester Airport, etc., reduced the spends. And this was probably my first time in my career where I saw a real big downturn. So it was scary in the fact of we were always $1 million plus turnover. we're always in that bracket for many, many, many years. Almost got there and then just thought it would never go. And it did. And once we came below it, it just kept going. And again, as a businessman, I'd never really, I'm not really, I was less ops, I was more creative and sales. I wasn't structural and kind of making big decisions around that. So all of a sudden when I'm looking and I'm going, God, I've got 17 staff and I can't afford to pay the wages and I'm losing big accounts. And, that was really scary stuff, like really scary stuff. And again, there was a point where we had to get a liquidation agency in with my accountant, and they were talking about insolvency and what we were doing, and we can't pay this and we can't pay suppliers and this, that, and the other. And I was sat there, and this is, it's my baby. I've had it a long, long time, and it was the most serious conversation I'd ever had in business, where all of a sudden it wasn't fun. It wasn't, let's go and get something, let's go and win something. It's all great, creative, let's all have a great time. It was, I could lose this, but also I could really harm a lot of small businesses that have relied on me. So kind of, I had probably 20 suppliers around me who I owed, and no one was big. And I thought, and I just looked at it, and it was that point where I could have easily pulled the plug, if I'm honest, and, weirdly come out of it really positively from a cash point of view. Barely, some people would know, some people wouldn't. It happens in business, and I'm not saying, positives or negatives against it. Sometimes you've got no choice, and I know people in that situation, and yeah, I would never judge. I just think for me, it was a point where we found a way out. So I spoke to the 20 suppliers, and there was people like Carl at Flow, amazing. Like, had a really good chat with Carl and really understood, really trusted me and believed what I was saying, and did payment plans and got all my key people, all my key partners and people who'd looked after me through the years paid. And it took 6 months, but we did it, and we got out the other side, and we had to reduce the team, and we got down to about 7 or 8. But that was the first time in business where I'd gone, right, I'm actually now a businessman. I feel like I'm doing more than just 60% of the job. I'm doing 100% of what I'm doing as an agency owner. And that was the most serious conversation I had. And I feel like from that point, it was, it lost its shine a little bit for a while for me. It was kind of, I had to really fight for trying to get it back to where I believed it could be. So about a year after that or so, I was having conversations with another agency about merging, because everyone talks about it in agency: merge, combine, group, or sell, basically. And that's what everybody talks about as agency owners. They're the buzzwords that everybody talks about. And I'd done not any of them. So I thought, right, okay, a merger could be a good point here. We're a project-based agency. There's no retainers. So we're hand to mouth every month, which, sometimes we would open our doors. Our target would be 60,000 turnover. And I would open my doors to -15 because of wages and this, that, and the other. And I'd have no deals. And I'd have to go out and get the deals. And doing that over years and years and years and years, it takes its toll a little bit. So it was kind of, right, I need a merger. I need something where somebody's got retained clients and stuff like that. So again, experience on a merger, I could talk for 5 hours on it. Kind of lots of learnings with that. Took my business and my people over to their business. So there was no disruption from their end. Lots of disruption for me. Lost half my staff because they were like, it's not really for me, this merger. It's not what I want to do. And I was fine. I was like, well, we've got a plan. We're doing something here. This is where we're going. Like, this is what we're going to do. It's going to change the business for a positive, and no bad feeling around it. And then after 10 months of trying to integrate and really make it work, I realized it wasn't. And kind of the investment of my time had a huge impact negatively on the financials of my business and my people, because I was so ingrained in a merger where you hear about it. The investment, they had partners so they could split, where it was me on my own, so I had to do it. And yeah, there was a point where the 2 days before I signed, I had to walk in and say, I'm walking away. and I only had 5 staff at the time, and I had to walk out, and wasn't a good response from those guys, which was a shame. You know, kind of, yeah. So had to literally get out of their office within a week, and then had to find a new home very quickly, and kind of, yeah. So from a learnings point of view on a merger side of stuff, it does sound great, and you do probably look on the sunny side of a merger, but when you actually look at it, chalk and cheese cultures, it's you hear about it a lot, and I understand, because everybody's showing their best at the time. Everyone's showing their best look, their best work, their best people, and I think after 10 months you actually see the real agency and the real people. And I think, so glad we didn't sign any paperwork before that. So we did something right. We didn't sign early. We let it bed in and go and move in with those guys. And then, yeah, so it was very much about going from there. And it was almost like a rebuild, really. And then from the business around about the 2018 mark, 18, 19 is where really changed my mindset, changed what I wanted for the business, and then went on that new journey of Creative Spark, really, and what did I want it to be? Because I found my love again, because I was letting go because I'd lost my love a little bit. So I wanted to merge and get a lot of the weight off me, because I just fell out of love with it because of the journey I'd just been on in a few years. All of a sudden found my mojo back. And I think one of the things I find is thriving and surviving. I've realized I do very well in surviving. From a thriving point of view, kind of, I feel like it's a scarier place when things are great and everything's great, and you're in, you know, there's money in the bank and there's lots of clients, kind of flows. But when your back's against the wall, you've got to do it. You've got to get out there. There's almost that challenger comes back up, and you go back to when you first started, and you puff your chest out and go, right, let's go again. So for a few years up to COVID, that's what we did. COVID hit. Obviously, I know probably lots of people talk about the impact of COVID and what happened for all the agency world. For us, very scary for a couple of months, but then we had a large business called Parfits, which was a food and beverage wholesaler. So you can imagine their business just absolutely blew up through COVID. So we had lots of work, and from that we were able to build the business again. And then really fast tracking to pretty much where we are today. We are, you know, we've actually practiced what we preached and done a reposition and actually looked inwards, because again, I don't think as an agency owner in a business I've done that enough. We sell that and we do that for clients and see amazing impacts of it. Really do see an incredible cultural impact, a business impact, but we've only done it probably 3 times as an agency, and we recently did it last year with our new head of strategy, Neil Mason, and it's just been a game changer from a kind of business point of view, from a vision, the team, the belief of the team, and the togetherness of the culture, and then really what we want to be as an agency, you know, put it out there, and that's what we're getting back in. So it's from a journey point of view, probably where we are today, and I think we've spoken before, Chris, is probably the best it's been in that potted history I've explained. And I think it's obviously I've learned a lot, and if I hadn't, then I shouldn't be in the game. But I feel like where we are today, all those things, hopefully, mistakes and things, how not to build an agency, has really helped to get me where I am today.
Amazing. Couldn't ask for any more, Neil, from the being honest perspective, and that's exactly what this is all about. Well, what Right Aligned is all about in general, but this series was specifically about giving us access to things that we would never normally see or hear, and probably most of the time have no right to see or hear these things. You know, they go on, like you said before, the dark room after 10 years, and probably shedding a few tears thinking, what the hell is this all about? I think there seems to be an underlying theme, and must be more your personality than anything to do with the agency or the businesses. resilience, and also just seizing opportunities at every chance. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I do. Resilience 100%. Like I suppose I take it for a given of what agency life is and owning an agency. But my partner, who's actually in the same world, because we've worked from home together for a long time now, you actually see each other's worlds and what they're like. And she's just blown away really by how it can be, from an intenseness to the kind of, the resilience you need. Every day's a different day. There's a problem, people leave, you get new talent, you lose a client, you win a client. It's there's a funny story. Mark Stringer, who's my non-exec and a very close mate of mine, owns Ahoy, and they've gone through their own challenges over the last 15 years. And I'll always remember Claire, who was my sales director for 8 years, amazing, unbelievable person, unbelievable person at a role, and made a massive impact to my business in a possible way. I always remember when she came in and said, I'm leaving. And like, this was my rock. Like, this was, she'd been with me 8 years, my sales director, kind of acting MD at times, just amazing. And she was like, I'm going to leave. And I always remembered, I just thought, I went, right, okay. And I had to just go for a walk. I was like, I need to breathe. Like, this is big. So I walked out, and I was walking down Swan Street, and holding it in, self-talking, lots of things of trying to figure it out. And then I literally looked up and I saw Mark, and he was in tears, who's another agency owner in Manchester. And I'm like, my face is, and I'm like, you okay, Mark? And he's like, no, I've just had my business valued, and it's through the floor. It's a disaster. And I was like, do you want to go for a beer? And he was like, yeah. And it was just, that is agent, it's kind of meeting agency owner to agency owner, both having two huge negatively impactful days, and just kind of going, let's just go for a chat and a beer. But then I think the good news, bad news analogy, where bad news happens, but then for that bad news, good news happens. And I feel like that is something in this. I think you lose a really talented member of staff because they want to move on, they want to spread their wings, fantastic. But then that changes you because you were getting too comfortable, which then takes you up a level from your learning and your kind of, and I just feel like through probably my career as an agency owner and the impacts in a bad way to things that have happened, I think great things have come from it. I really believe that.
Yeah, I think there's also a tendency, and I think this has all come about through social media and influencer culture, and the ideas that you mentioned, the mergers and all those sort of things, they get thrown around like it's something that you just do over text messages and it's like done within half an hour. I think people need to forget that businesses aren't just robots; they're just extensions of the people that start, and they evolve and have emotions and identities of their own because they're designed to. I think the best ones do, don't they? Whether they're turning over billions or turning over pounds, it doesn't really matter. I don't think that sort of side of it. That's quite private and really down to the people that are behind it, sort of things, and the things that they have to manage and deal with in their people. But the idea that these things that we create don't need to be, unlike maybe the more corporate world where they are a bit more robotic and a bit more, to sort of repeat, do the same things, eat, sleep, repeat sort of type mentality. For us in the creative world, I think we have the opportunity to create things that are really, really personal, really that appeal to maybe a small niche. We don't need to appeal to billions of people. We just need to appeal to the people that want it. I think that can get lost. And the idea that growth is the be all and end all, money is the be all and end all.
Yeah.
I think that gets lost. And by the time that you got to that point where you really got carried away with that and washed along with that, and then you get to 10 years and be like, actually, this doesn't make me happy. It doesn't matter how many young people you tell that, everybody has to go through that at some point to realise what their happy point is in places, don't they?
Yeah. And my honest answer is, people hate the word lifestyle business in agency. I don't know why. I don't know what it is, and they don't want a lifestyle business. Well, I don't want to sell this business, so it's a lifestyle business. I don't want to sell it. I love it. you're saying, how do you, is it resilience and stuff like that? I just love what I do. I love the business. I've grown up in the business. I just love it. And I think the people you meet. So through the years, you can imagine in 21 years, and especially with Creative Spark, who just used to trust, our recruitment policy was hilarious. If I like you, or one of my managers, like, you're in, it was like, CVs are CVs. It was just, come in, you're really nice, get a good vibe, good energy, come on. And that didn't always work out, but I've had so many amazing, talented people through the door, like, who have gone on to ace really good stuff. Like, we had, there was one lad who came in, no experience, just wanted to get into it. And at the time, around 2013, 14, we're like, anybody, come in, come and help in ops, come and help in admin, come and do just a bit of. And then a couple of years, he's account exec at Asda. And it's like, just bringing in these, but just a lovely guy who just wanted to be immersed and learn, and just being able to surround yourself with people like that, who are just super talented and are just great people, really nice, energetic, positive, driven people, is part and parcel of it. You've got Jordan on this this Zoom, like, great, absolute amazing guy, like, so positive, super talent. And we're lucky enough to work with Jordan on stuff, and he does some great stuff for us. And it's surrounding yourself with people like that really does make it work, part of what you do and part of why you want to do it.
Yeah, especially Jordan's been on right along before, actually, really helpful to us, and shared some great insight about what he does and the work that he does in the community as well. But I found if you've been around a little bit like we have, that to sort of then have people around you that are young, that are willing to learn and hungry to learn, it just makes the whole experience far more enjoyable, doesn't it? Because you can get quite long in the tooth and feel a bit disconnected. I don't know about you, but a lot of the time I think, do I belong in it anymore? Sort of, you have to reposition yourself just so that you've got a bit of more relevance. So can you find a place that, because like skills and its change and technology changes, trends, it's so agile, isn't it, design? Again, that's a cliche, but it really is, so that people are up and coming and following those things 24 hours a day, where we sort of, well, I don't know about yourself, but you sort of limit your time to it a bit more these days. You sort of focus on other things behind the scenes which aren't quite as pretty. So having yourself, like you said, people like that is really, really exciting to sort of see what's next, the up and coming generation. One thing
it is.
Quickly, sorry, I was asking about, you were talking, something that really hit me is that you were mentioning about the suppliers that you owned and people that you've worked with. And that point, which is, I've seen it many times when people want at companies leaving a print supplier, for instance, 100 grand short, and all those sorts of things, because it's easier to wind it up. But away from being empathetic and worried about other people and their business, how was that for you? What was that like mentally? As someone that had built this thing up, been surrounded by design all your life, you got to a certain point and then it's just started to slowly fade away. What was that like on a day-to-day basis?
So I was, it was dark in the fact of, I was still young. I didn't really have anyone to talk to. I'd always speak shop with my dad, and I still do. Like, my dad loves to know what's going on, and I have really good chats with my dad, which helps. But still, that depth of pride for me with my dad, I never went there and told him the depth of it, because I didn't want him to worry, and so really lonely. And again, you hear that quite a bit of where you've not really got anybody to lean on. And I think that's, again, learnings of non-execs and things that get thrown around a lot now, and it's the buzzwords of what you need. And there weren't a hell of a lot of non-execs coming to me at the time, and I feel like somebody who can be an advisor out of the business, who can that would have been massive for me at that time, because I just didn't have anybody. So and I suppose, because of that, again, the resilience side of stuff, I just refused it. And because I wasn't that tight on financials, and that isn't my skill. A lot better now than I was. It was terrible. I I didn't really understand it to that level. I just had two people in suits going, you're not making this and you're not making that, which means in 3 months you haven't got a business. And I'm like, I'm looking at it and I'm going, but how do I get out? And it's like, you just need to make money and sell more. And if that's what I could do. So it's very much, you know, I feel like in that scenario, it could still be in my hands. I still had an opportunity. There was an open door. There was like, well, you've got 3 months. And if you don't, it's shut. So again, that resilience of, and back against the wall, I'm going to do this. I suppose that just kicked back in again. But at the time, it was awful because I had 10 people, I think, at the time on my team, and I had 20 suppliers minimum who, like I say, were not big businesses, which have been hugely impacted. You know, I had some like 15 grand debt with one of them and a production team, and I kind of like, they were tiny. There was 2 of them. So if I went on for that, they would have probably had to go. And then it's just that impact. So I had a lot of that on my shoulders, and the pride of where I'd got to, because obviously I was 12, 13 years old, and I was just like, no, I'm not going to do it. Like I'm not come from what I've come from and done where I've, you know, got to where I've got to just let it go, because I'm like, you know what, that's the easy thing. 3 months, you know, I'm never going to do it. Let it go. And I was like, I can do it. So when you're saying that and me kind of looking back, I feel like that's where my head was with it. I almost didn't want to open that door wide enough, because I think I would have just completely gone, you know, gone under on it.
Yeah, and it's easy to do. Isn't it? I think a lot of us go through our own individual sort of struggles in those, you know, those dark, very quiet, you know, lonely sort of spaces where it's very noisy in your head. But it's if you look around you, it seems quite serene, which is really bizarre. It's what a strange space to be in. You're talking about when you were in the airport, Manchester Airport, and then obviously losing it. In hindsight, what's that like? Can you look back at that now and a bit more sort of joviality, maybe not the right word, but the idea that you get a 300 grand contract, you think, that's a game changer. To losing that, you know, that's the opposite game changer, isn't it? And is that in some way, I've always found like the losing of things sort of really sort of hardens me more than the winning of things. You sort of makes you quite complacent with winning things, and you can sort of say, we're going to get every airport in the world, or, you know, you've probably gone through a trajectory like a lot of people. You've got Man United and you get other sport assets. It seems to come around like that, doesn't it? In a weird way, even if you don't push for it. Then it's a bit like that. Then the American airport, and you know, those sort of things seem to trickle. But then if you lose one, it's sort of like, oh, what's going on here? Then how do we sort of, you know, counterbalance that loss?
Yeah, the airport luckily was a slow death. So it was kind of, it went 3, 2, 1, 50, 0. So it was kind of over the years. So it wasn't, it kind of, I could see the countdown. So I could start to really try and change my business plan around it to try and, because I knew it was coming. It was just every year there was another one which just fell off, was Ministry of Sound. So Ministry of Sound was around about probably 200,000 account. And we were their key agency for all their commercials, TV commercials. And kind of that was the one that I could feel the budgets were just like, for a prime time X Factor, in between X Factor commercial, they were paying nothing. So I could see they were already paying nothing, and they wanted the world and wanted it in 3 weeks, just silly turnarounds, burning everyone out. And I could see that going, because there were just individuals who would do it for even half the price because of the brand. And that was instantly off the sheet, 200,000 of the year. And that was heavy. But again, I felt where with that, you had a plan. So you had a redundancy plan, or you had we've got to reduce the team, we've got to this, we've got to that. But again, you had 3 months. So what's that plan? And in that 3 months, we need to find another. And we'd find another. Like, that's kind of, from a sales point of view, it's what I've always done. So it's kind of business owner who runs a business and has a sales manager, I've always been the sales. I've always brought in the big deals. So kind of it's on me. So Ministry of Sound, I don't look to my right and say, who else is going to bring this deal in? It's back on my desk and I go and bring it in. So it's kind of scary, but again, it's in my hands. It's for me to deliver it.
I suppose that goes back to that entrepreneurial sort of spirit. Being, a younger man going around town and, doing that sort of, picking up your first bits and pieces, isn't it? That's still part of that. It's just a bigger version of it, isn't it? But do you reckon that entrepreneurial thing is more suited to that younger, brash, out and about? You've got the gift of the gab. You don't really care. That's what people speak or say back. It's a little bit easier to do it in that environment than it is maybe when you've got the pressure of teams and businesses and, banks and all the rest of it.
Definitely. 100%. If I look back, I always say, and I think one of the questions, if you started an agency now, I've been petrified. Like, kind of, I've got a 1.5-year-old, I've got a mortgage, I've got, if I started an agency, unless I did what some people do where they start and take a couple or whatever as a bit of a base, or but if I started from scratch like I did, where I'd literally go, right, I'm going out in Manchester Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, and hopefully I can chat to an entrepreneur who needs a 400 quid logo doing. So that was driving my dad's car, living at my mum and dad's house, them giving me a little bit of money for food and bits and bats and having my tea ready, and no pressure. So there was just no pressure to learn your trade and to be able to just pick up 400 quid, 1,000, 200 quid, no rent because I was doing logos. So I started off in a really, a lucky way where I was young, didn't have any pressure. Everything was sorted. Money I made, I could just go and buy a new top and do this, that, and the other. So I was able to do that for a few years where I didn't have that pressure. If I started now, wow, that's scary stuff. It really, really is, because of just the out of the blocks what you need to earn, and yeah, the way you have to get new business now, and the different channels and different ways, and what you have to pay, and what and especially where networking fell off a cliff with COVID and nobody could really go out and network. It's a scary time. It would be definitely a scary time to do it now.
No, what was really interesting earlier is that even though you've done a lot of the American thing and you did the joint business where you run the Manchester thing, the reference a lot of the time to the area that you're in. The clients set up with the airport, the football club, the other things that are in and around the area. I'm sure you have a lot of businesses and clients outside of there. Is that something that if you're advising people, that's maybe a bit extreme to sort of advise people to go to a different part of the country, but being within an area that is so large, is culturally rich, is creatively rich, is always had that sort of scene from independency from music and fashion and all those sorts of things. We talk about sports and like a destination in the northwest, isn't it? Has that always been a help? Your identity is the city. You've been proud to be part of that scene. Like, I know Jordan is there. You've talked about car that flows is within the area. Is that something that has always been part of what you've wanted Creative Spark to be? Is to be proud of community? Because I know a lot of people hide some of that sort of stuff, don't they? They don't necessarily always reference where they are, or they don't make it clear where they're based. It becomes a bit sort of ambiguous.
Yeah, and I've come across that quite a bit, where they don't want to put the logos on the website because they think someone could call it and go and get it and stuff like that. And we've just been the complete polar opposite. And maybe that, as is why we lost some amazing clients we had. But I've always felt like you've got to be confident. If you're doing a good job, you're doing a good service, you're doing it for a good price, and you're building the relationship, which is key. And you're not just an email relationship, and it's about face to face in whatever format, building relationships, talking more than just work, being a confident and needed, and just being there for someone. All of a sudden, it doesn't matter who gets in touch, does it really? Because you've built that relationship and they're dead happy. Now, if you do a bad job and you don't build that relationship and you are too expensive, then that person trying to get into them and try and nick it off you will get it. And I think it's just the way of the world of what we're in. I don't hide from it. The clients we've got are amazing. A lot of them are on the website. And hopefully we're doing a good enough job where, you know, people probably do contact them. I speak to quite a lot of the clients and they say, I think it's reduced a little bit now, but they were saying every week, emails, LinkedIn, DMs, everything's coming through from agencies, from SEO, marketing, brand, campaign, digital website. You know, everyone's getting it from everywhere in this agency world, because there's a lot of us. Even just in the Northern Quarter, there's probably, I don't know, 500 more. Like, there's just so many of us. So these clients are getting it from everywhere. And it's the same with your team. You know, to me, I speak to the team and they're getting recruiters every other day. So if they have a bad week because they've not hit a brief, or they've been told off, or they've, you know, such and such, and then a recruiter got a great job, like 30% more than what you're on, still Manchester, still. I think it's the same with team as it is with business. I think it ups your game, and if you're not, you know, at the peak of your game, you could lose it. But you've got to be confident that in your own abilities, really.
Yeah, I think I've noticed quite a worrying tipping point where we went from, say, a few freelancers knowing a few to then knowing a few thousand, and then knowing a few founders to knowing a few thousand founders, knowing a few recruitment agencies to knowing hundreds of recruitment agencies, all pretty much offering the same thing, the same roles, the same sort of strategy to their marketing and the way that they communicate. And it gets to a point where you go, oh, it's great because there's a diversity in the marketplace and it's all really rich and healthy. To it's just too much. Is that how, if you were a client, what would they be thinking when you're bombarded with stuff? So it's like you say, go back to relationships and being honest and truthful with people, building, they're going above and beyond. You know, you don't want to go stupid and wait to answer the phone at 5 a.m. on Sunday, but you know, treating people like people both and people, those old adages, go a long way, don't they, in a very busy, noisy place.
Yeah, I think they do. And I think one of the things in my old age is, as I'm kind of contemplating what I'm doing it for, and you know, I've gone through the chapters. I think one of the things that I'm really passionate about is trying to help SMEs wayfind through it. I just find it, like, I do feel sorry for them. It is a minefield. Like, we're all saying we don't want to pitch anymore, which is absolutely amazing. Coming across that more than ever. And we don't go into that because everybody talks about it. But I honestly feel like there's a change, and I'm really buzzing. Like, I feel like everyone's getting on the same page. The big boys aren't, but the smaller agencies are. But with that in mind, that's what a lot of SMEs would just ask you to do. Hi guys, there's loads of you, come pitch it. And it's like, I've only got 10 grand, but you're going to have to spend 5 of it to prove that you're good enough. And I think now they haven't got that. What have they got? You know, what are the tools and what are the things they can use to pick an agency? And it is a minefield. And I get probably 3 new business calls a day. Like, we are, you know, really active. There's lots of stuff coming through. And 60% of that is way under budget what they are for us, and probably overqualified. And what I try and do as much as I can is just advise on the phone. So it's not, sorry guys, no, if you haven't got 50 grand, I want to speak to you. I go, well, for that budget, I would refer and recommend you go onto LinkedIn, you ask for a freelancer, because a freelancer will give you so much more time and effort, and you've got per hour, the better for you. And there's some super talented freelancers out there. You don't need an account manager. You don't need this. You don't need a strategist. And almost kind of try my hardest to either give them someone and say, I've got someone who you can work with. They're amazing, you know, really good team, or just try and get them to wayfind it through. Because I do feel like if we all try and do that as much as possible, the SME world will probably be a better world for us all to work in. I think it's just trying to educate and help them as much as possible wayfind through it, because the amount of people that come to me that have been burnt because they've used the wrong agency, spent too much, kind of used, you know, a freelancer and they've disappeared, and they didn't need that. They needed an agency, tiered, layered, etc. There's lots of moving parts in that world. I'm just trying my best, because we get so much new business through, is just trying to help, like, wayfind it a little bit more for them.
And hopefully, I like to think some sort of calmer sort of sense of the processes that will, by doing that not only makes the industry healthier, it also comes around, and again, it's a reputation thing, isn't it? It's a long game as well. So the idea that somebody will respect that, they might not need you for 5-10 years, but they'll remember it, and then it'll swing back and roundabout. So everybody benefits from it in the long term. I just know it's a time, mate. I'm completely absorbed by what you've been saying, and I think it's a good place
No
to
problem.
I think we'll have to book another. We'll book a whole day next time. Just talk about.
No, it's a good. Yeah, good therapy session. I appreciate that, Chris. It was.
It's a funny one because I know it can get a little bit dark. These things. It can get a little bit like, you know, you reliving it while you're telling people that you probably never been to before, let alone me. I put it out there in the public, it can be difficult, but I quite like to think that a lot of what we're doing is quite cathartic in some ways. You know, it really does sort of, it allows people to maybe dig deep into places that they've not done and sort of let it go. Without being too therapeutic about it. It's like I've noticed a lot of people that have said very similar things, and they've revisited places, or have found a bit of comfort in just sort of sharing it with people that have no agenda and might not have any knowledge of before, like myself. And if that can help, like you've just said then about supporting SMEs, if that can help one junior or one person that's going through it as an agency owner themselves, that could watch this back on their own, in the middle of the night when nobody else is around, then that's a happy place for me, because we're not just supporting the clients, we're now hoping to support the people within the industry that maybe get overlooked a lot of the time because of this sort of stuff, because they're pushed to meet deadlines, they're pushed by clients and money and all the rest of it, and founders, which they should be, but we all need a bit of a bit of comfort every now and then. So if it can act,
definitely
act as that, then I think everybody could be in a better space, not just the clients.
I agree, and I think the work-life balance, as the years go on, it's key, and mental health is key. Jordan came in to talk for us about it. It is like agency is 100 miles an hour. It's an amazing industry to be in. It's the best in the world for me. I love it, and I think anybody who's in it, we should be privileged we're in it, because it's incredible. But because it's in there and it's ideas and stuff, it can be heavy. And I think talking with each other and being open with each other, and just it isn't all roses. Running an agency is tough, but it's also the best thing I've ever done, and it's amazing.